Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, 1 year in, how is sports betting going in Indiana? The state unveils what it calls the ultimate 2020 travel experience. Titus Bakery celebrates 40 years. New survey data shines a spotlight on Indiana student debt. Prep work continues for the 2022 college football playoff in Indianapolis, and our insiders take on the top business stories of the week. Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. I'm Andy Ober. Online and retail sportsbooks in the Hoosier State ended their first year by generating over $430 million. The state sportsbooks topped $160 million in monthly bets for the first time in December. Casino Association of Indiana President and CEO Matt Bell joined Inside Indiana Business host Gary Dick to talk about the success of sports betting in Indiana.
Let's talk about the numbers. So 4 months since sports betting came to Indiana, $430 million. A good number, what was expected?
I think it's a tremendous launch in the state of Indiana. It shows that there was an untapped market, Hoosiers who wanted to enjoy their sports games by placing a wager on them. We believe that there was a thriving black market in Indiana. The legislation that went in place has allowed Hoosiers to enjoy that same activity, but to do it legally and in a way that the state benefits and adds enjoyment to their viewing experience.
Yeah, and you mentioned the state benefiting. The numbers so far, 4 months in, about $3.7 million in wagering taxes.
That's right.
Collected. So there is an economic impact there.
A significant economic impact. And it's an impact that we'll continue to benefit from in Indiana. Know that sometimes tax collections lag bets that are placed because we don't pay tax until bets are settled. So a futures bet, betting that your favorite team will win the March Madness, won't be settled until March, which is when the state will realize the tax benefit there.
Indiana gained an advantage by being among the first states to implement sports betting.
So we've created a wonderful opportunity for operators in Indiana. We are without competition in our Midwest states right now, but that's subject to change. Illinois passed a bill just a month or so after Indiana did. They haven't been able to come to market. We expect Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky will. But really, I'm confident that what Indiana has done, both legislatively and from a regulatory standpoint, can provide a roadmap for other states looking to do this in the future, and the right roadmap to success.
Well, as we were talking off camera, you talked about the framework that was created here by the legislature and others in putting this together. And as other states, you mentioned Illinois passed something, but is still yet to implement.
That's right.
Sports gambling there.
So I think the legislation that passed is a credit to the General Assembly. It was thoughtful. Legislators had looked at this subject for a couple of years, understood how they wanted to structure this so that investment could be successful and so that we could attract that investment. Fortunately, from my perspective, lawmakers in Illinois did not learn those lessons. They have a very expensive, government-centric regulatory and tax structure that's prevented folks from making investment to come to market. So that means we're seeing customers cross our Indiana border, visiting our great facilities in Northwest Indiana and in Southwest Indiana, because consumers like to wager on their favorite teams. We have an advantage right now, and our operators are really pressing that advantage.
Still very new to this whole process, but so too very new is the online, of course, mobile sports betting. Yet that accounted for about 68% of that number.
It does, and we actually expect that percentage will grow. When we look at other states nationally, I think New Jersey is around 80% of all wagers placed are placed mobily. There are still partners who will come online in the coming months. Some of our operators have not opened their mobile sports platforms to date. I think as that becomes more prevalent across the state, and as folks become more comfortable with the mobile technology, you'll see that percentage grow even more.
How about investment? You mentioned the sports book, the physical sports books of some of these casinos. There have been substantial dollars that have gone into creating these sports books.
I've heard a lot of folks comment that Indiana's sports books are as well apportioned and more beautiful than perhaps any in the country outside of Nevada. I think that's a wonderful credit to our operators who've said we want to create a unique experience for Hoosiers who want to enjoy the games that they love in this environment. They have invested in wonderful amenities. The lines are long at our sports books. Some folks have waited, an hour, 2 hours to place a bet. Indiana's operators could not have embraced this more fully and in a better way for Hoosiers.
Very quickly, what's going to be key with competition coming online from other states? What's going to be key to continued growth here in Indiana?
So number one, we have to be responsible in the way that we present sports wagering. We have an exceptional regulatory framework in which we work. Our Indiana Gaming Commission has done a marvelous job. It's our responsibility to be good actors. We have great regulations that ensure the state's interests. I think our operators with our regulators and lawmakers pave a way for Indiana to be successful and to lead.
All right, Matt Bell, the CEO of the Casino Association of Indiana, big economic impacts, some numbers just released. Matt, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, sir.
All right.
Still to come, Titus Bakery marks a milestone and a playground with a purpose. But first, Frommer's named Indiana among the world's top places to go in 2020. Now Visit Indiana has developed what it calls the ultimate 2020 travel experience, called the 20 in 20. Indiana Office of Tourism Development Director Misty Weisensteiner came in studio to detail the effort.
I mentioned off the top, because I think it frames this discussion well, that Frommer's came out and put Indiana, their 20 list of places to go around the world this year in 2020, and Indiana made the list.
We did.
Yeah.
We're the only domestic location that made the list, and highlighting that was the Dunes, the newest national park, and then Indianapolis too. So we're taking that a step further and saying, those are great locations, you got to come see those, but there's so much more to see and do in Indiana.
And I know that's behind this 20 in 20 list, or a group of lists. Talk about the idea and what it's all about.
It's to create awareness of all the product that we have in Indiana, drive traffic to our website, get people maybe refamiliarized with things that they knew that existed but forgot about, get them to go back, or experience something new, something they didn't even know was out there.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about 20. These are 20 lists, and it really is indicative of there's so many attractions around the state of Indiana. These are all themed, so I know you've released 3 themed lists so far. 1, cities, towns under 25,000.
Yes, we're having so much fun with these lists too. They really are great. The first ones that was released is the small towns, under 25,000 population, great main streets, shopping, local dining, things to do all throughout the state. And then next was destination dining. We're very well known for our farm to fork, very unique restaurants, particularly in certain locations throughout the state.
Yeah, well, you mentioned on those cities lists, I know Franklin was on the list, Corydon, there are a number of communities widening around the state of Indiana that are focused there, the destination dining. And that seems, that farm to table whole concept seems to be gaining traction here in Indiana as well.
It does. You're starting to see them all across the state, or restaurants that are known for a particular dish, such as St. Elmo's and their wonderful shrimp cocktail that they have.
Shrimp cocktail, absolutely. I know the third list, breweries.
Just released, this week.
And that, again, you talk about a growth industry. I think it's grown from 30 or 40 breweries to 130 plus.
Yeah.
So you've got lots of options around the state of Indiana.
You do, and the lists are in no particular order. They're just a list of 20. We went to the Brewers Guild to help us come up with the list, and also referred to our Best of Indiana contests that we've had. So it's a combination of industry specialists and then past voting on our website.
Tourism, as you well know, is really big business in Indiana, and a big part of generating more business in the sector, I've got to assume, is awareness. And awareness is what these 20 in 20 lists, I guess, are all about.
It does, because, Indiana is a big state, a lot of miles between the north and the south, so we may not know in central Indiana necessarily what there is to do or what's happening in the north and south ends, and vice versa.
Visitors spent a record $127 billion in Indiana, 3.7% increase. So what's next? Can you give us a hint, the next list coming out? Or?
I think it's something we shouldn't tell our dentists about.
Okay, that's a good clue right there. We'll look for that. And that list comes out when?
Later on this month, and you can go to visitindiana.com/2020, and that'll give you a breakdown of when all the lists are going to be distributed, as well as some hints. And then you can sign up for our newsletter as well to get the newest news as soon as they are released. And then we have a contest, an Instagram contest, hashtag the 20 in 20. If you go to one of these places, take a picture, put it on Instagram, and then we have a drawing for prizes.
All right, very good. Misty Weisensteiner is the director of the Indiana Office of Tourism Development. 20 in 20. Those lists will be released throughout the course of the year. Misty, as always, thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Later in the podcast, a park helps kids with a challenge make a connection, and survey data sheds light on student debt. But now, Titus Bakery is celebrating 40 years in business at its 2 central Indiana locations. The family continues to work to expand its offerings. Owner Terry Rake joins us to talk about the milestone.
You were on not long after you really took over in 2012, 2013, but congratulations on the milestone.
Thank you. I know, it's amazing.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting entrepreneurial success story because your dad, who founded the bakery, right, Bill Titus, it came to you in 2011 or 12 and wanted to sell it, right?
Yeah,
he wanted to retire and sell the business.
He was ready.
But
yes.
you had a different idea.
Well, he kept complaining about it. He wanted to retire. And it's like, all right, Dad, let me see if I can find somebody who would have an interest in buying the bakery. And I did. And they were in negotiations, and actually there was an offer put on the table. And when my dad told me that, I thought, wait a minute. No, after all his hard work, I think maybe I could do this.
Yeah. And you really stepped in with a plan to expand, to keep the same quality, but to expand the number of products. You opened a store in Westfield as well. So talk about the growth here over the last 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, it's been steady, but every day, we're gaining new customers. But yes, so I did not want to do anything in terms of the quality, how he made the product. We kept the same product, but again, just like you said, we expanded the product line, changed our marketing, changed pretty much everything about the bakery and the way it worked, except for the quality.
What's been, in your view, the key to success? Because this, you're a small business. It's a very competitive business, especially when you have big national chains like the Starbucks and the Dunkin' Donuts and others. In your view, what's been key to the success of Titus?
I just worry about what we do and make sure it's the same every day. So we really pay attention to that. Plus, I think it's really important to make that customer feel welcome when they come in the door. So customer service is really important to us. And then, too, I look for opportunities where I think maybe, it's a fundraiser here or an event that I think would be a good fit. We will certainly take a look at that.
How important is social media in the process? How important has that been in your growth?
A lot. I do social media almost daily, but you got to be able to connect to your customers and tell them what's happening. I think that's really important.
Yeah. As you look at growth opportunities, you have grown since really taking over things in 2012. Where do you see as opportunities for growth?
Well, I would like to be in everybody's town, but I want to make sure any new opportunity, such as opening up another location, that we do it right, we take our time. And so that's what we're doing. We're just perfecting what we're doing now, and then hopefully here in the near future, we'll be able to expand more.
Very good. Titus Bakery celebrating a major milestone, 40 years in business and growing, not only in Lebanon, but also in Westfield as well. And Terry Rake, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you,
Congratulations.
Gary, and enjoy your donuts.
I will grab one of those after the show. Thank you.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business Television on stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. Still to come, how do Hoosiers feel about student debt? And an update on preparations for the 2022 college football playoff. But first, Barry Harvey, mother to 4-year-old Asher, calls a new playground on the Purdue University campus designed for children with communication challenges an imagination heaven. The space encourages kids of all ages to communicate through play. Purdue Clinical Assistant Professor of Speech, Language, and Hearing Sciences Ann Gritt joined Barbara Lewis in the Business of Health.
Well, let's talk about this unique playground. Just talk about the playground itself, and then we'll start talking about really the programs that you use.
Sure. So the Bob and Joyce Beery Miles Outdoor Learning Space is a playground that was designed specifically for children with communication impairments. So there are some pieces of the playground that are unique. For example, the slides are made out of metal so that children that have hearing equipment can slide down them without the risk of static to their equipment.
Okay, and then, so these are for specific ages, between 3 and 5 in your program, but this playground is used from all ages.
That's correct. So I run the preschool language program for children ages 3 to 5, but we have other programs from birth all the way through teenagers those children are using the playground as well as they're receiving communication intervention in our clinics.
Okay, so you do a lot with this. You're training future researchers and people that work with kids with communication impairments. You are also helping these children and by helping the children, helping the parents. So let's talk a little bit about the goals of your program. How do you do what you do? How do you help the children improve their social skills and their communication skills?
Yeah. So we really try to use the natural environments that children are in. So the playground and being outside and playing with other children is a natural routine in a child's life. So every day at our preschool, we're out on the playground and we're using that as an opportunity to build on their social communication. So we have adult support out there where we're coaching and helping the children do that.
Okay, and then I thought another really interesting aspect is you have some children who don't have communication impairments in there with the children. So why is that, and how does that work?
Yeah, so we call those children our peer models, and so they're typically developing with their language, and they participate in all activities with the children as well, and they provide some nice models of language, and then they're also there to help our graduate students learn about the difference between typical communication development and then what disordered communication looks like.
Okay, can you give me an example then of how you work with them to help increase their communication skills?
Sure. So if we see two children, maybe they're on our swing together. We have a large swing that 4 children can play on at once. And maybe one child really wants to be pushed. We might go over there and notice that he's pointing at one of the adults. And so we might model for him, oh, I want to be pushed on the swing. So it's taking advantage of those natural opportunities as they happen out on the playground.
Okay. And so then how do you kind of know where to guide the children? I'm guessing, so they come to you every morning, and how many are usually on the playground at one time?
Right, so we usually have 10 to 15 on the playground at once. We get to know these children really well individually because we're with them 4 mornings a week. We do assessment to know what their goals are, and we see them throughout the morning, so that helps us know what to work on.
Okay, and so do they get to choose what they do, or are you kind of guiding them the way? I'm just trying to picture this.
Yeah,
how you do your work.
So on the playground, it really is free choice for the children. It's all open to them, and they come up with their own ideas of how they want to play. I'm remembering a group of children that used a Frisbee as a Roomba vacuum one day, and that was how they wanted to play. But then within that, when they need the support, we're there to model the language and give them the guidance.
All right. Well, Ann Gritt, thank you so much for being on Inside Indiana Business.
Thank you for having me.
Later in the podcast, Indy continues to prepare for the 2022 College Football Championship and perspective on the top stories of the week from our insiders. But now, college funding planning organization InvestEd Indiana has released data from a survey it commissioned. Among the findings, more than 3/4 of Hoosiers are concerned that student debt has a stifling effect on economic growth, worker training, and talent retention. Vice President Bill Wozniak talked about the results and what they mean in our Eye on Education segment.
And these are some interesting numbers that came out of this survey, just released within a week ago or so, and what they said about Hoosiers and kind of their mindset.
The interest in education, even with student loan debt making a lot of headlines, the interest in education not dampening. People see the value in education and the importance of it. At the same time, they're concerned about the levels of student loan debt, and they want help so that their kids and future groups are not going to be in a bad position.
Yeah, so still valuing higher education to be sure, but also very concerned about debt and the impact on the economy.
Absolutely. Families are noting how important it is for companies, employers to be concerned about this and offer free resources so that the families can get that type of help. But yes, the value of education is seen, and also how do we avoid excessive student loan debt?
Yeah, talk about, for folks who may not know, InvestEd, one of 22 nonprofit, state-based financial aid literacy programs. Talk a little bit about what you all do.
Yes. So we try to help any Hoosier Hoosier with any question about funding college. And we're now just at about 40 years. Wow. Over the years, our roles have changed slightly as the world has evolved, but it's to help Hoosiers plan, pay for college with the least student loan debt possible, and now help with workforce development issues where families, students want certificates and different type of training. So it's an exciting time.
And I think one of the other things that came out of the survey is the fact that those who were surveyed feel as though Indiana is better positioned, maybe companies, communities better positioned when those resources are available.
As far as a benefit and how over the years we've talked about different benefits that employees and families want, the real important thing these days is how to help people get retraining, additional training, or help with the debt they currently have. And as opposed to 401k or different types of benefits, which are standard, things related to paying for college or repaying debt that you have are very high on the minds of Hoosiers and people across the country.
Yeah, I think another outcome of the survey, folks looking, wanting options, different options to pay for things. The income share agreements, Purdue, I think, has made that somewhat popular. Talk about that interest.
They really have. When we go to a conference outside the state, as soon as they see Indiana on our name tag, they're like, oh, that's where it's all happening. So we're pretty popular these days.
Yeah.
The ISAs, the income share agreements, and a way to pay for college where the student says, I will pay with a portion of my future income, right? Very popular in the survey. And when you think about it, what happens to students that don't have a cosigner, a family that might not want a certain type of loan? Now you have an option where they say, I will pay a percentage of my future income after graduation. And it's very popular, and it's something that Purdue is leading the way on, and other schools are looking at very seriously.
Where do you throw it all in a pot and stir it all? Where's everything going? Where is this all headed? Because student debt, as you know, is such a huge issue. Education, training, such a huge issue. Where's it all headed?
Well, as we saw in last year's survey and then again this year's survey, the interest in education, the value of education is not waning. Families are interested in this, and students really want this. At the same time, they don't want the high levels of student debt. So what they can do on the front end to limit that debt, and creative ways that the schools, the state, all of us can come up with to limit that student loan debt while the students still get the education is front and center again this year.
And certainly InvestEd on the front lines of that whole issue, do hundreds of events around the year. Bill Wozniak, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right.
Still to come, our insiders take on the top stories of the week. But first, it's still more than 700 days until Indianapolis plays host to the 2022 College Football Playoff National Championship game, but planning efforts are in high gear. As part of that process, a delegation headed to New Orleans for this year's championship game. 2022 Indy College Football Playoff Inc. President Susan Boffman joined Bill Benner on Inside Indiana Sports.
So what did you learn? What are those nooks, or what are they full of?
They are full of information. We were able to experience all the fan events. So we went down with sort of a split focus. We went down as the host committee, so we had official seminars and meetings and very specific information we were trying to get, but we also took the route as a fan. And so we went to all the fan events, we tried everything out, and we figured out really what's the same and what's different for Indy.
And New Orleans in particular, because it's situated much like Indy, with the Super Bowl right downtown among the hotels and things. Next year it's Miami, which is a much different environment. So this was really a good city learning as well.
I feel like it is very similar with an urban stadium right downtown, very easy for the fans to walk back and forth. I feel like Indy's connectability to the hotels, the fan events, and the stadium really are unparalleled anywhere else, but it gave us that idea of density of fans. How do you get the fans around? How do you keep the traffic flowing? And trying to figure out how it can all work best together.
And of course, weather. You talked about crowd management, weather. And of course, we all go back to the Super Bowl when we had such incredible weather. They had some weather issues down in New Orleans, but you think we can kind of take that factor out of the Indianapolis equation?
I do. Just as with the Super Bowl, we have to plan for harsh conditions because it is January in the Midwest. However, we're watching the weather very closely. The last couple of years, it's been very moderate here. So we'll plan for the comfort and the safety of the fans and also the least impact on the teams so that they have a great, safe environment. But we're not advocating staying inside. It's football season. We want to put our football gear in and hit the streets.
And just like with so many events that have come here over the years, this will be more than just about the championship game itself, but many, many activities for fans to participate in.
Yes, we have great fans here in Indiana and the region. We will have a lot of public free events. We'll have a concert series happening. There's going to be a very large fan fest, which is very well done. There's a free media day, so fans can come and tune in and listen to their favorite coaches and athletes speak to the media. And there's a general tailgate area, which will be in our whole downtown, so it will be a don't miss.
Indy, of course, we've been doing a championship football game, the Big Ten championship football game for a number of years. How much does that experience help as we look forward?
I think it's a huge benefit to have the partnership with the Big Ten Conference. Indiana Sports Corp has been taking care of the football teams and fans for years now, and so I think we're able to build on that and grow. We're the first host city for the CFP that does not host a bowl game, but I see that as actually being an advantage because we have a very singular focus. We take care of the Big Ten Conference and the CFP national teams.
An incredible run of events, starting with NBA All-Star, almost 13 months from now, and then NCAA Final Four, and then we go off with the college football championship game. Any chance of burnout from all that in such a compressed period?
I don't think so. Our volunteers here are so great, and we have so much professional volunteerism within the community. We're trying to spread it around so we get great ideas for all the events from different people. So there'll be some common threads working with the government, dealing with transportation, public safety issues where we can learn from each other. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for innovation within each event.
And as we wrap up, Susan, we will soon get an update from the Community Championships Fund about the important aspect of Indy coming again to put forth the money behind these incredible events.
Yes, we have a very unique fundraising situation. The Indy Championships Fund, led by President Dave Lewis from our community, raising money to go across all the events and make sure they're well funded. So we'll look forward to their report next week.
All right, well, great information, Susan, the president again of 2022 Indy College Football Playoff. Thanks for being on the program, and we'll see you sooner rather than later.
And finally, our group of insiders takes on sports betting, tech growth, and more. This week's panel includes Bose Public Affairs Group Principal Roger Harvey, Copper Mountain Technology CEO Irina Golashokin, and Gregory and Appel Insurance Vice President Steve Appel.
A big week in the state of Indiana, the State of the State address. Governor Holcomb delivering that address earlier in the week. Roger, I'll start with you. He touched on a lot of things. There was an economic development announcement. Teacher pay was in there. Tobacco issues. Your takeaway from the speech.
Well, a couple things. I think probably the biggest thing is for years they've talked about tobacco and raising the age. And this year it appears everyone's spraining an ankle jumping on the train, and so that certainly will be a good thing in terms of from a health standpoint. The other thing is it's always great to be governor when revenue exceeds forecasts, right? Yep. And so that's a good problem to have, although that means lots of people are going to have ideas on how to spend that extra money. But I think the governor was very thoughtful in how he came out with a plan in terms of how to utilize that money, help with some infrastructure in key parts around the state, which will help higher education and help those that will be attending those schools.
Yeah, certainly ways to spend the money. Education in Indiana, a big issue, and teacher pay, a big issue, and that was addressed in the speech as well.
Yes, that is very, very important. The more money we can pay teachers, the better teachers we have. We have more talented people going into teaching. That means better children, better educated populace. Yep. Always a good thing.
Steve?
Clearly, the red movement that teachers have been doing has had some effect, I think, and it's getting addressed. It's still not fully worked out, it appears, but I'm sure something's going to happen, and at least the pensions are getting funded as well, which is good.
Roger mentioned the state revenue situation. There was also an economic development announcement in the speech. Fiat Chrysler in Howard County, $400 million, essentially a retooling and expansion will mean some new workers, a combination as well. So it seems as though the Indiana economy, including the manufacturing sector, heading into 2020 looks pretty positive.
Very exciting to see that. And there's as an employer, I will tell you, hiring is hard
Yeah.
because there's lots of good jobs, and anybody who's any good has a job right now.
We're going to get to you on the tech thing in a minute too, Irina. But Steve, as you saw that big announcement in Chrysler, positive because their manufacturing jobs tend to pay a little bit above, or sometimes a lot above the average wage.
Yeah, well, it's good to see Indiana maintaining its competitive automotive stance in the country, but also it's nice to see as a taxpayer is when those incentives aren't paid out until they've actually hired the people. So I think I'd like to see that being done as well.
And I would just add, I think sometimes people forget when you look at Indiana's economy and the history of it, we have been very successful in manufacturing for a number of years.
Long
and
time.
so when you see this additional investment in the automotive area, and then when you look at the other assets we have in automotive investments, whether it's Toyota down in Princeton or Honda in Greensburg and so forth, Subaru, and Lafayette, it continues to build on that momentum because we are a leader in manufacturing, and that's something I know our leaders in the state have embraced for a number of years.
Yeah, it's a good point. Next generation manufacturing, to be sure. Technology investment, certainly the tech ecosystem, if you will, in Indiana has experienced a lot of momentum. A couple of stories this week. Tech investment saw a triple-digit increase in Indiana last year. Also, Indiana among the top 10 markets for future tech growth, that according to a survey out from Zillow.
It's exciting to see the recognition of all the hard work that the tech community has done over the years. Back to 1990s and the software artistry start, one of the first software companies here that is the granddaddy of it all, and a lot of the community work. It's been very exciting to see the growth.
And that's because we do a lot of these stories, startups launching, and a lot of very positive stories. Some people say, is it really as positive as some of the news is? I mean, there seems to be a lot of momentum. You're in the midst of it. You see it every day. What's your take on the tech economy in Indiana?
It's thriving. Even being downtown where my office is, you just see the people in there, and there's excitement, there's energy in the air. The acquisitions, on the one hand, you look at this and you say, oh, there's another company that got acquired by out of state. But what happens, these people take their money, they go build new businesses. So it's a great thing for the state.
I saw that the number was 350 plus million this year, and at a recent VC luncheon, they said that 500 million is kind of the next target for Indiana to try and get to, which I wouldn't be surprised if maybe hit it next year or the year after. So it's good.
A big part of that is, getting VC money, not just from Indiana, but from other parts from the coast and other places around the country. It's always been a challenge for Indiana. There was a study that came out from Notre Dame this week that I thought was interesting, talking about air travel and connectivity between cities and tech communities, really cutting down on that local investor bias and opening up the gateways for more investment. And Irina, I know you've got an opinion on that. We see how Indianapolis had very few nonstop flights years ago. Now I think we have over 50.
Yes, direct flight to San Francisco is one of the reasons that we have the increased VC investment. The venture capitalists look at places where they have more than one investment, so they can do one trip and cover multiple companies. And if they can do it in a day, that's even better. So from that perspective, these things are key. And Boston is another investment hub. So I think achieving 500 million just got a little easier.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the coast, you look at the large population centers, the majority of those are going to be on both coasts. And with the people out there and the size of companies, that's where a lot of the financial resources are. And, in the past, it's really taken a huge effort to get people interested, just interested. And then you got to figure out how to get them here. And so, the more direct flights we have, as we see more and more of these independent third-party groups ranking us, although I am questioning how Oklahoma City was number one in that.
On that list,
We'll find out if this is streamed in Oklahoma City. I'll get hate mail for that. But I like Oklahoma City, but I don't think they're number one. But in any event, the nonstop flights, direct flights, are really going to help us continue to build on that momentum and getting some of that VC money.
And we saw this week another nonstop added to Boston, again, an East Coast tech hub as well.
And the big life science activity in Boston as well, which will help our life science community here too on the investment side.
In terms of dollars, big dollars coming into the state, sports betting was just legalized, actually launched in Indiana in early September through 4 months. I think the number is well over $400 million was wagered both in the sports books and also online. It seems as though it was a successful launch and one that sports betting's here to stay. And Indiana, one of the leaders, one of the innovators, one of the first few states in the gaming business.
Well, things like fantasy football have been leading this, now the sports betting, and I think it's exciting, and it does merge technology with sports, and I think it actually does drive more interest, and especially the concern, though, it's so much fun that the Boca Raton Bowl starts looking interesting. Place a little halftime bet on, so hopefully people are watching there. Keeping safe.
Yeah, I would add, to me, the biggest thing is how, and you referenced this, Gary, how we got out front early on this. And, other states are going to figure this out. And so I think it's important to establish that beachhead early on, and hopefully that'll help us weather some of these other states that jump online. It's no different than what it was with the casino industry. And, as more and more casinos started popping up in other states, that impacted our income and revenue from gambling.
68% of the wagers were online, and the sports books, the casinos investing millions of dollars to create sports books in their physical structures around the state too, so it's meant jobs as well around the state. That's all the time we have for another edition of The Insiders this week. Roger Harvey, Irina Goloshokin, and Steve Appel. Thank you, one and all.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments, as well as the top business news from throughout the state, at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Andy Ober for Inside Indiana Business.